Uh, Blessed Father, we thank thee, Abba, for the opportunity of just being here with you, for opening our eyes and our ears to thy love, to thy goodness, to thy mercy, which endures forever. We praise thee, Abba, because thou hast called us and are preparing us to be chosen as thy children. We praise thee and we bless thee, Abba, B'Hashem Yahushua HaMashiach, your son. Amen.
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 All right, with that, I'm going to turn off the cameras and the microphones. I'll see you in a bit. Shalom.
Shalom.
Thank you. So here it is, July 31st of 2022. Last week, we were discussing this concept of building a consciousness. So this week is going to be a continuation of that notion. The idea is that we're gonna talk a little bit about the Garden of Eden and then some other matters. Hopefully we can get through it all. There's quite a bit here. So the idea that there's a reason for Yahuwah to tell his people to talk about it. We talked about the Shema a couple weeks ago. You will think about these things. So if you take the letter Bet, written in Paleo-Hebrew, it's this unfurlment. It's starting with like a small circle and opening up. It's the beginning of a bigger spiral. It's basically the pictographic motif of a tadpole, of an embryonic beginning. The head of the tadpole, like the beginning of an embryo, becomes the brain, the eye, and then the backbone extends. So you have the personal space going into, you might say, the environment, or reaching into the surrounding, which would be social space. They say that the shape of the letter Bet in the Paleo-Hebrew was like this vertical top-down look at the floor plan of a tent. So you have the tight unfurlment, that would be the personal space that I was told. I remember hearing that somebody said that's called my father's house, or that's the father or the parent space. And then it opens up to be like a vestibule, which would be the public space or the living room space. As a simple tent, remember in Boy Scouts, is basically one room. You got the door and there's the tent. But so this is a little bit more developed. I suppose it would be like the Bedouins who live in tents out in the desert. A simple space doesn't quite do it. You have the social area for the family, you might say, or for friends, but then to have a turnaround and tuck around inside, you might say is insulated, but it's that self. So in the Shema, where Yahuwah says, you will consider these matters, that's like this personal space, and you will teach them to your children. Well, that's reaching out. So I can see in the Shema, you might say, an expression of the unfurling of the letter Bet. So you could say if the Aleph is the self, or Aleph is even Elohim. So by saying these matters, it's seeing different pictures within the Aleph Bet. I've mentioned that the Aleph Bet could itself be a communication from on high. So if the Aleph as a prefix letter means I am or I will, that's a matter of showing the intent and the identity of the author of what is then to be expressed. So if you have a single word that starts with an Aleph, and it's a verb action, it's basically saying, I am doing this. In which case, I can project that the entire alphabet is a communication. So the Aleph before it This is what the author of whoever that is that invented the alphabet, which we project as Yahweh Elohim Zavot. It's then his identity and expression. But if I am putting myself into the bet of being given a body, then I am the Aleph. So on the one hand, Aleph is, or the alphabet is an expression of Elohim. Now, on the other hand, it's myself. On the other hand, I've said that the alphabet could be read as the covenant, the Brit, between Israel and Yahuwah, and that it's also a map of the course that a human will run, because the word earth is Aleph Resh Zadi. Aleph, again, I will, I am, and Resh Zadi means to run, as rats, those things which run. So playing into Hebrew comparisons to English, Spanish, other languages, thinking that back at the Tower of Babel, all the common language was Ivrit, Hebrew, and it all evolved, morphed, permutated into the various other languages we have today. And then Zephaniah 3:9, Yahuwah is going to restore, which would be reinstitute the common language, which would be Hebrew, Ivrit. You could say to some degree this is conjecture, but it's also rational, logical, determinable. So some people don't like those things. As I've mentioned, I've heard somebody say, to think is carnal. Like, okay, then don't think. You don't have to engage this study. I've heard other people offended at science. One friend called philosophy, that basically is a Greek structured word. Philo, like Philadelphia, is brotherly love. There's half a dozen different words for love in Greek, one of which is agape, another one eros, there's philo. But the word Sophie or Sophia is the word for wisdom. So philosophy literally is a composition that means the love of wisdom. Well, isn't that a good thing? Doesn't the book of Proverbs tell us to, if we don't have enough wisdom, to ask for it, and with our wisdom get understanding? There's a couple words for wisdom. There's, in Hebrew, there's chakma, chet kaf mem hey, chakma would be the expression of, and there's also shakil, shin kaf yod lamed, like that famous American basketball player named Shaquille O'Neal. Well, that word Shaquille is Hebrew, and then other languages borrow off of Hebrew. Could be Arabic, could be, like I say, the word for Spain, what's now called Spain, used to be called the Iberian, I-B-E-R, Iberian Peninsula. And the word Iber, Iberia, comes from the word Eber, Ein Bet Resh, which is the word Hebrew. So the Iberian Peninsula, or Spain, used to be inhabited by Israelites. You might say in Solomon's day, he had a fleet of ships. They became known as the Phoenicians, but they would, you might say, harbor there, Tyre and Sidon, Lebanese coast, also Ezion Geber or Ebion Gezer down in the Persian Gulf, that arm where they could go south. And Solomon's ships went around the world, took 3 years to go circumnavigate the pancake or the globe, however you want to see it. Just kidding. But what I'm saying is that the Hebrew language, and I've mentioned before, just to bring some people up to speed here, is that a fellow by the name of Isaac Moseson, M-O-Z-E-S-O-N, brilliant man. He was living in New Jersey, I believe. Last I heard, he was living in the land of Israel. Wrote a book called The Word, red cover, 20,000 English words that derive out of Hebrew. And he also wrote a book called The Origin of Speeches. Last I spoke with him, he doesn't like the paleo. He doesn't like mentioning the word Yahuwah, talking about Yeshua, but he's a incredible study of the language, just as a resource. So there's a problem going on these days. And the problem is, I'm suggesting that there is a huge, unaccessible almost value, treasure in studying this Hebrew, and especially the Paleo-Hebrew. We'll get into that as to why in a little bit. That it's unlike any other endeavor that a human can engage in on the face of the earth. At the tail end of last week's the writing that, the handout, if you want to call it that, I wrote, be the human. What is that supposed to mean? Be the human. If you read in various epistles that Paul wrote, he's basically saying, don't be the human. Don't engage in the flesh. Do not concern yourself with mortal affairs. Or it seems like, reading it in the simple English, Paul would be saying, don't involve yourself with the economy, with the politics, with the arts and entertainment, with the sports. Just live a simple life and be heavenly minded. And then there's that phrase that I've heard from long ago, well, don't be so heavenly minded that you're no earthly good. Oh, gosh. What are we to do? So if I say be the human, am I suggesting that we revel in, well, licentiousness? No, I would never suggest that. But what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be human is that the creator of the heavens and the earth designed the human mind. He designed the human body. I remember as a kid sometimes hearing, why didn't he give us 3 arms? If I had another arm. Or you might hear your mother has an eye in the back of her head. She always knows what them kids are up to, even though she's looking the other direction. How is that possible? If you ever seen a close-up of insects, astounding design. You look at a spider and they've got 8 eyeballs. It's like, well, most of us on the planet can get along with 2. Why are spiders equipped with 8? How would life as a human be different if we were equipped with 8? Or if we really did have 3 arms, 2 arms are busy and another arm can do others. I mean, think of all the stuff we'd get done. Why is it that a human, you might say, common at best, walks the pace of about 3 miles per hour? If you're walking kind of adeptly, and then when you are an athlete who can, back when, his name starts with a Z, the guy who first broke the 4-minute mile, running. Imagine if Yahuwah had designed humans to walk 1 mile an hour faster than they have. The history of the world would be different. The military endeavors, the amount of stuff we could get done, it's almost as if the Creator imposed, were they unnecessary? Severe limitations on human abilities to get things done. I remember hearing a poem or a statement once long ago, maybe some famous wrote it, but it said something along the lines of, should we be so astounded that human ignorance is so ignorant, or human frailty is so frail, or the human frustrations, we're so blind, we're so in the dark, we're so limited Yet the human body, gosh, if you watch something like Cirque du Soleil, and I don't know if people think that's good or bad, I've seen them a couple times, the world's most astounding gymnasts put to music with a theatrical flair of comedy, and to stand empty of response is actually a Hebrew word. I believe it's the word tohu, as in tohu bohu, formless and void, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's like, wow, I don't even know how to respond. Now somebody can ask me, hey, what do you think about that? Or how's that grab you? Or put into words what you think of what you're seeing. This idea of saying, for humans to confront human conditions of limitation and try to exceed them, is that a bad thing? Is it a bad thing to try to run a mile? Is that a bad thing to try to push human boundaries? There's a book called the Guinness Book of World Records. And in it, every time somebody breaks the boundaries of what standard humans can do. Now, we don't have any idea of what the people before the flood could do, what those Nephilim could do. How big were they? How fast could they run? So the Guinness Book of World Records is within a boundary of our own present consciousness. How much weight of a barbell can some strong man lift up? Back in the circus days of the 1800s or early 1900s, they'd get people from around the world, kind of like Cirque du Soleil. Cirque du Soleil means circus of the sun, you might say, or the sun church, assembling the most radiant. Not a bad idea. To see the epitome of what humans can do. Or perhaps you want to be a human that can come up with the best song, the best poem, be the best mother or father or brother or sister. To strive to engage humanity, is that carnal? Is that bad? To realize that humans were designed with, equipped with 5 senses and a brain to think with. Is that a diminishment of spirit? Are humans supposed to revel in their humanity, rejoice in being Adam? Adam, Adamah, Aleph Dalet Mem Hey is also the word for earth. Eretz, Aleph Resh Zadi, is also translated as earth or land. Eretz Israel is the land of Israel. So I've found mixed in the scripture. If you try to lock in, I want to find out, is the concept of earth, terra firma, is that Eretz or is that Adamah? They kind of shuffle back and forth, just so you know. It's almost at the whim of the speaker. So you can't ever say, well, you can say that it's planet Earth, but the land itself could be Adamah or could be Eretz. Maybe there's some particular details, you might say the official syntax of the language, but quite often, even in English, we might find over time that language changes. So to go back to Paleo-Hebrew, on the one hand, we might say, we're going to go back to the oldest, the original, but nobody knows how it was enunciated, how it sounded to the ear. or not even necessarily how it was used in the sense of, do we have the same sentence structure, syntax, grammatical devices and rules? Modern Hebrew versus biblical Hebrew, from what I understand, it's not consistent. So nobody even knows how Paleo-Hebrew was spoken. There's some people that suggest that there was the ah sound after every consonant. So arets, Aleph Resh Zadi, might have been aratzah. Hebrew, ayin bet resh, might have been chabara, Aleph ayin bet resh, cha, ayin ba, that's the bet, ra, resh, chabara, not ivrit. There's no way to know. Isaac Mosesson calls the study of the ancient language Edenic, as in the Garden of Eden, going all the way back to the beginning. There's a word kadem, kuf dalet mem, that means primordial, ancient, of antiquity, first, best, superior, foremost. The forecourt player in tennis or basketball would be kadmon. Adam kadmon, primordial man, whether it was Adam or some caveman or whatever, that's just this concept of the ancient one. But kadam also means east, kuf dalet mem. So to face east is to go back to the ancient ways, the ancient consciousness. But there's another word for east, which is zarach, zayin resh het, and it means sunrise or shining or phosphorus. So there's this great one-line quote of Isaiah 60 verse 1. It says, Kumi Ori, arise and shine. Kufav Mem Yod, Kum Mi. Well, Kumi, how can it mean arise if the Yod suffix means my? So whenever I read the word Kumi with the Yod at the end, if it means my rising, that's not me telling somebody or me receiving information. So this context of how do you read Hebrew with prefixes and suffixes is fluid. It's not static, but the word kum means static, to be placed, established, to stand. So kum means to arise, but also hamakom, makom, mem kufav mem, is to dig a hole and plant a post and lock it in. So it's ayin mem dalet, amad, standing. Just trying to give you a sense of the way the language is built. Sometimes there's a vav suffix that is translated they, or sometimes he or it. Kumi ori, or is light. But it's translated in Isaiah 60 verse 1 as arise and shine. Well, who's shining? If the word is light, that's not the same thing as shine. But if I read that as I arise, my light, my illumination, it's suddenly personal. The word kaf yod, ki kaf yod hyphen with bet aleph. Well, bet aleph or bet vav aleph is the word bo, as in yavo. Because arriving, oreka, aleph vav resh kaf. Well, wait a minute, aleph vav resh is light and kaf is your, but aleph vav resh yod, or ri, means my light. So who's speaking? Your light, my light, jumping between first person and third person, write it off as poetry. This is where if you personally wrap your mind around how these words are spelled, what's Vav Resh? Well, those are the two letters that are, you might say, thematically pictographed as mankind, the Vav man, the Resh man, the caterpillar type, the butterfly type. Ben Yosef, put to the weapon. Resh, Ben David, exalted as the dignitary. the Vav right before the Zion, Yeshua being crucified, the Resh right after Kuf, right after Zadi, which is the resurrected one. I can read into Aleph, I will. Who will? Is that the Almighty or is that myself? But Kaf, if that's the suffix meaning you, then that's him speaking to me. But if Kaf represents the Torah, can I read this as that my light is the Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, giving his Torah so that the simple humans, the Vav men, can progress, evolve to become Resh men? That's the intention. That's the plan from the beginning, from the Aleph, is that the Vav man are all those humans born on the face of the earth, and they can elect, they can choose life, they can determine to run the course. Aleph, Resh, Zadi. Well, Resh and Zadi are not in alphabetic order. That would be Aleph, Zadi, Resh, but I will Resh, rats, I will run the course, the gauntlet of human life on the earth, and be a Resh man, a successful, honorable, human, flourishing Zadi, having resurrected from the state of the Ben Yosef caterpillar Vav man who's put to the weapon. I can read all these things in besides the surface narrative. The surface narrative, arise and shine because your light has arrived. So Bo Arek is actually, in English, we'd say Arek Bo, your light has come. So in Hebrew, you got to shift the words around. So if you got to shift the words around to jump in the syntax of Hebrew and English, how do we know the professional translators have it right? That's why there's so many different translations, is because there is no actual official standard of what's right or what's most right. So even the professional translators, even studied Jewish scholars, sages, go about this the same way that we're talking about doing it. We're in league with the best of the best by looking at these words. When it talks about your light has arrived, the very next phrase is Ve Kavod Yahuwah. Well, now Vav, Ve, the letter Vav is a connector. Typically, it's just kind of written off as the word and. It can mean but, however, when, while, thus, joined to, it can mean any of those things. It's not just the word and. So the kavod of Yahuwah, I can see as being the result or even the instigating factor of my kumiori. Because my light has arrived, and, or because the kavod of Yahweh, what's kavod? Kaf, bet, vav, dalet. Well, you look up in the Red Dictionary or Ernest Klein's dictionary or any other lexicon or concordance will tell you that the word kavod, K-V-D, remember the bet is pronounced as either B or V, like in Spanish, kavod or kabod, kabad, glory, honor, weighty, esteem, and the word liver, like the organ that filters your blood. The liver of Yahweh has lifted up Aleka. So what do you do if you're trying to figure out how the Hebrew works? Well, the word liver is the heavy organ. If you're a doctor, you cut somebody open and you're pulling out different organs. They're different sizes and different masses, but the liver is full of blood and heavy. What is it, 8 pounds a gallon to water? So the word kavod isn't necessarily liver. And when in English, I might think of glory and honor as light and vaporous, ethereal. Why is it heavy and weighty, earthbound. Weight pulling you down to the arets, the Adama. Which is it? Is it either? Is it neither? Is it? It's pictures. It's concepts. So the heavy weight of the glory of Yahuwah, then the last two words, Aleka Zerach, Ayin Lamed Yod Kaf. Well, the Kaf suffix means you, and Ayin Lamed Yod, well, look in the dictionary. Ayin Lamed Yod, then look at Ayin Lamed Hey. It means lifted up. So Ayin Lamed Yod, that would be my lifting. Is it talking about Yahuwah? You, the Kaf suffix. So it's almost like Yahweh's saying, this is what I have done to lift you up. Ayin Lamed Hey, look in the dictionary, very interesting word, Aliyah. Ayin Lamed Yod Hey, promoted to a higher dignity. That's like the Vav man becoming the Resh man. Success, prosper, upper, higher, advancement. So primitive people, well, even gourmet people nowadays, they'll have a pestle and the pestle is the upper one in the mortar. So you put spices or grains or pharmaceuticals and you smash. The aleh is the one that's raised up, that's used to pound down, mortar and pestle. Ayin Lamed Yod is the pestle, the one that's raised up, that smashes others down. Yahweh says that's what he's going to do with Israel. That's what's the future in front of us. He's going to raise us up to be the dominant factor over all the other peoples. But Ayin Lamed Hey also means reckoned, counted in, surpassed, excelled, prized, exalted. Well, this is lifted up. This is the best anybody could hope for. Ascended, shot forth, taken into, inserted. And then there's something called the Aliyah festivals. You ever hear of that? Otherwise maybe known as the three primary Moedim. 3 out of how many? 8. 8? I thought there was 7. Well, you look in Leviticus 23, and Yahweh says these are Moedi, not Moedim, Moedi. Okay, study of language, gosh. The Yod Mem is a plural suffix, numerous. But the Yod is the singular personal suffix. So if he says Moedi, that doesn't mean how many numerous Moedim, that means these are my Moed. Mem Vav, Ayin Dalet. But Mem as a prefix means the place, the object, or to turn a concept, an immaterial concept into a noun, like knowledge. Knowledge is immaterial, but to make it something of substance puts a mem in front of it. So if Dalet Ayin is the word to know, or Yada, Yod Dalet Ayin means the experience of knowing, mem in front of Dalet Ayin, maybe a mem Vav Dalet Ayin or mem Dalet, anyway, that means the knowledge itself. So Ayin Dalet Yod, Edi, is adornment, bejewelment, treasure, choice, best, witness, testimony. So Yahuwah is saying, these things, these Moedim that I invented, that I thought up, that I built and staged as annual regards around the year, the circuit of the year, are my choice best treasure that testify of my kavod, my grandeur, my weight, my glorious honor. And I'm giving them to you, my people Israel, to, as it were, be dressed up in as well, to be adorned with, by keeping the regard of these Moedim. Prized, exalted, ascended, taken up into, inserted into the heavens, as it were, by co-engaging with Yahuwah in his ways, his adorning testimony, to be inserted achad, uniform with him, uniform, one look, one shape. Very interesting thing, you going back to the Garden of Eden. Ayin Lamed Hey is this word to be reckoned, to be counted in. Oh, I long to be in that number. An old hymn. When the saints come marching in, I'll be there. An old song we sang in Sunday school. That's this word, Ayin Lamed Hey. It's also the word Sefer, Samik Peresh, to count. It's also the word Memnun or Memnun Hey, to count. To count arithmetically, that has to do with the word ayin. Ayin Yod Nun means to count, to consider, to balance exactly, weigh carefully. You better look at this in regard. That's wrapping your mind around something. Ayin Resh Kaf, Erik as in eriktology. Shin Memnun, Shemen. Memnun is that word mana, to count. Manna, where's this from? Shemen is the word oil, but also means assess, appraise, evaluate. That's used in your head. Bean, bet, Yod Nun. Your beanie, put your beanie on, your beanie cap. Bean means understand, consider. You better look at this and engage. Compare this to that. Strong's number 995 and 996. Does bean just mean between? It also means mediate, compare, consider, put these two things in scales of balance, similar to the word mishvat. There's numerous words in scripture where you start looking through the dictionary and you'll see that Yahweh expects humans. Let me put it this way. My phrase is that he expects humans. He has given humans the ability, the potential to use their brains, to use their intellect, to think, to ponder, to reason. Haggah, hey gimel hey, navigate, steer. It's also the word for phonics, to spell words phonetically by looking at the consonantal value and constructing words. Adam's first job was to construct words. Did Adam speak Hebrew? Is there any reason to think that he did? Besides, as in the Edenic study of Isaac Moseson, that you look at the original, like the word charef, has to do with a neck or the scruff of the neck. Well, that's a giraffe. The giraffe is Mr. Necky, the big, long neck, nothing but neck with scruff on it. Well, that's Hebrew. So the word giraffe had to come out of Hebrew. Kalav, Caleb, all heart, kal lab, all heart, the word for dog, Hebrew. Fishtail, dag, tickle, tickle. With the fishtail wiggling back and forth, that's Hebrew. But this same word, ayin lamed hey, for reckon, count in, surpass, expel, also the derivative changed the hey suffix to the vav suffix. You get ayin lamed vav, and it means to cover with leaves. To cover something with leaves. Well, that's like Sukkot. You take foliage and you make a covering, a little temporary dwelling, and you live inside of it. And after a week, it kind of dries up and you toss it out, burn it. But the temporary foliage covering. Hey, but wait a minute. Remember Adam and Eve also made aprons and covered themselves with leaves, a fig leaf, after they ate of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Why? Well, they suddenly were ashamed. You look in the dictionary, ayin lamed hey, we're looking at this word from Isaiah 60. It throws you into ayin lamed hey, because it's ayin lamed yod kaf, and then you get covered with leaves. But look at the very next entry in the dictionary is ayin lamed vav bet, aluv. And it means put to shame, insulted, humble, miserable. That's what happened to Adam and Eve. We're going to jump into Genesis chapter 3 in just a moment. Ayin lamed vav hey is foliage, but it's also injustice and unrighteousness. Wait a minute, so is that a good thing or a bad thing? It's neither good or bad. Hebrew words are filled with all these other meanings because as you start studying, especially using the dictionary and scripture, it builds this incredible understanding. Remember, the Tower of Babel was built to reach into the heavens. It said it was built unto the heavens. Does that mean it's tall like the unto the heavens? Some people think that. Some people think that it was built formatted to the constellations. It was built in reference to the heavens. The message in the heavens, so different colors, different types of bricks, different zodiacal, meanings to the constellations. Some people, I think it says in the book of Jasher that the Tower of Babel was built because Nimrod, the mighty hunter, El Gabor, the mighty man, was going to go up to the top and shoot an arrow into the face of Elohim. Yeah! Never got it finished, so they wasn't able to do that plan. But you hear these stories. What's it say? What's it mean? The word ayin lamed vav, hey, is injustice, unrighteousness, the root of put to shame, cover with leaves. So is that bad stuff? But ayin lamed vav yod means genius, elevation, superiority. And I'm saying this because this is the way to use the dictionary. Just look at the derivatives, and it paints a picture around a certain base word, and where the base word is ayin lamed yod kaf, aleka. Aliyah, the Aliyah festivals are genius. The Aliyah festivals are designed to elevate Israel into the position of superiority, like Elohim, where he is, where he's at. The word Shem is not just name, it's also fame, renown, and reputation, but it also is translated as the word here and the word there. It's where you're at. So where's Elohim at? What's the Shem of Yahuwah? Well, if you look at the meaning of the 22 letters, there's the disclosure in there. If you look at the Moedim, there's a disclosure there. Ayin lamed vav, yod vav tav, brilliancy, highly gifted, brilliancy. So I can go back up and say, well, wait a minute. Kumiori kivau aretka, vekavod Yahweh aleka zarach. Aleka is the glory, the weight, the honor, the esteem of Yahuwah, which is, what is that? It's what lifts you up brilliantly. And the word elite, ayin lamed yod tav, elite. Well, that's the English word, the elite, the best, the unlike everybody else. That's the elite. But the word kavod, little way to remember the words, in the Garden of Eden, it says, and Adam was unlike any other creature. He was bad. So it says it wasn't good that Adam was bad. Play on words. It wasn't tov that he was bet dalit. Bet dalit in the dictionary means to take a branch of a tree and cut it off. Now you're separated from the rest of the tree. And what are you going to do with that branch? You're going to sand it, polish it, form it, make a clothes hanger out of it. Now, here, I took a branch from the tree, bring it into my house, do something to it. Now it's useful to me. That's bet dalit. So to be kaf bet dalit, kavod, means like no other. Adam was like no other. Adam was bad, and it wasn't good. That's why Eve, Hua, was made. So he'd have another counterpart for him, with him, to him. So if bet dalit means no other, then the glory of Yahuwah, the kavod of Yahuwah, is like no other. Well, then how do you find something else to describe it to? There's other verses that we were talking about where Yahweh says, we talked about this a few weeks ago, who are we going to compare him to? Here, let's make up stories of other gods and compare them to those gods. No, don't do that. He said, do not tell the story of other gods to compare me to. Yeah, but that's our only frame of reference, is something that he's made, or stories that we make up based on what he's made. Gosh, so how do we honor him? By saying, well, he's just like nothing. Nothing. What did he give us? He gave us the alphabet. He gave us the Hebrew language. So the study of Hebrew and the study of the alphabet is honoring the fact that he designed human mind, human intellect, to engage phonetic spelling of words, and the language of Hebrew, his ideal choice, because he built his own esteem and glory into the Hebrew, which is why it was unlike any other language. Bet Dalet. In fact, there's a dalet in Hebrew. If we know how to appropriate Kaf, Bet, Dalet, Kaf, this open hand, the Torah, the Bet, this mind, this unfurling, the Dalet, there's this door, it's the Kavod, it's wait, you gotta just ponder it and you'll see it. It's kind of like I can just describe, there's this thing called the magic eye pictures from back in the 70s and 80s. Looks like wallpaper, computer printed, but you refocus your eyes about 3-4 feet back behind the surface, and all of a sudden you can see three-dimensional imagery that was planted in there. You have to personally look at these words and letters to find the kavod of Yahuwah. But there's something about the Moedim that he gave to lift us up, the elite, brilliant. And then the last word here in this sentence of Isaiah 60, Zerach, Zion Resh Het. It means, in the dictionary, shining, break forth, appear, went eastward like sunrise. Lifted you up to go eastward, lifted you up to go back, lifted you up to Kadem. Zerach and Kadem, Mezerach, Mem Zion Resh Het, literally means eastward. It means to, the word orient, to orient yourself, to find your bearings, to find out where you're at. Well, how do you find out where you're at? By going back to the ancient language. Well, that's the Paleo. Just for what it's worth, we're looking at Ayin Lamed Yod, Eli, and and as you're looking at the dictionary, your eyes jumping around the page, and you look at Ayin Lamed Yod Samik, that's raising up. What's Samik? Well, Samik's a picture of the menorah, like a tree that bears fruit. The Samik is the tree with branches, and the next letter Ayin is the fruit. And then the Pei is the mouth that eats the fruit. So Samik, Ayin, Pei have a very specific connection with each other. But if the letter Samik is this picture of the menorah that bears the fruit, then something about this brilliant genius opportunity to know, to apprehend, to realize what is the kavod of Yahweh, and to lift him up. For us to be lifted up as we lift that up as a prize. Well, that's Elise. Hey, that sounds like the lady's name in English, Elisa or Alisa. Ayin Lamed Yod Samik. Hey, it means in the dictionary, rejoicing, exult, and delighted. I've heard that name before. I didn't know it meant that, but again, we're just looking through the dictionary and finding stuff. Now, we're talking about foliage, and we're talking about to cover with leaves, put to shame. When Adam and Eve, Adam and Chua, ate of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, they were suddenly ashamed, and they did something. They made aprons. So in Genesis 3:7, it said, Vav Yod Tav Pei Resh Vav. Tav Pei Resh. Well, Vav Yod and Tav are all prefix letters, and Pei Resh, par, well, that's the word like puri, that's fruitful. But it literally in the dictionary means to stitch or to sew. Par. Something about the fruit of their action. And then Ayin Lamed Hey, Allah. Well, that's translated leaf. They sewed leaves of fig tree together and made for themselves apron. That's the way it's translated. But if you look at that, Ayin Lamed Hey it means reckoned, counted in, surpassed, excelled, prized, exalted, ascended, shot forth, taken up into, inserted. The fruit of their action was to insert themselves. No, what they did, why they ate of the fruit. Remember why they ate of the fruit? They were told something, or they were reasoned by the Nachash. They were reasoning. He didn't tell them to do something. He gave them reasoning. We'll get to that in a second. Let me read the rest of this. The word tav, aleph, nun, hey. That's the word fig. Tav, aleph, nun is a fig tree. But you look in the dictionary, tav, aleph, nun also means weep and lament. Soon as they ate of the fruit of the tree of knowledge, they wept in lament because they realized what they had done. It also means sexual desire at the time for mating animals, and it also means pretext. A pretext of what? Pretext, that means a setup, like a prefix. Well, tav is a prefix letter, so look at aleph, nun, hey. And we'll look at that word again in a few minutes, but aleph, nun, hey is the word for ship, like a boat on the ocean. It also means cause or to bring about. It's a pretext for a quarrel. Well, when they sewed fig leaves on and they heard the sound of Elohim halakha moving in the garden, he says, hey, they were hiding. They were hiding behind the fig leaf. They were hiding behind the foliage. They were hiding because they were made aware of something, which was the pretext for the quarrel that Elohim has had with humanity since. It also means deceive and overreach. Aleph, nun, hey. Deceive and overreach, that's another synonym meaning definition of the word Yaakov or Jacob. In fact, even the letter kuf, the word monkey, kuf pei, is a picture of this circle in a line, or the circle is like this long arm to reach, to overreach, supplant, superimpose. But monkeys also have this long tail that they grab the branches and swing through the trees with. And the letter kuf means after this, or the back of the head. After this. Well, you look up into the meaning of the word Yaakov, yod, ayin kuf bet, to drop off the yod, look at ayin kuf bet, and it means the wake of a ship. What follows a ship through the water? What follows an aleph, nun, hey? A ship goes through the water and there's this little trail of bubbles and a wake, so that you can follow. A detective follows a trail. What we're trying to do is that very task. We're doing the detective work of following the trail, the wake of a certain ship. What ship? Some people think that they did away with galley slaves when we got the era of the self-propelled, self-locomoted vehicles, ships and cars. Other people think we're all still galley slaves of the ship of state, rowing with the whip on our back of mort gauge. Mort gauge. A gauge is a caliper. Mort, death grip to choke you, mortgage. Things are built into words. So the slaves rowing to propel the ship of state, metaphors of how do we keep human empire cruising faster. Going back to this word, and then it says they made for themselves chet gimel resh tav, translated apron. But you look in the dictionary and it also means a girdle, a belt, or a fence. It also means lame or leap forth. It also means limp. Is it an apron? Does it mean to limp as if you were lame, sore foot? Or does it mean to leap forth? Or does it mean girdle? It's all those why? Well, remember, Pesach is the first moed. Well, besides the Yom HaShabbat, the Sabbath day. When I said there was 8, there's the Sabbath day, then the 7 moedim in Leviticus 23. So if Pesach is the first of the 7, remember in the Mishkan pattern, it's represented by the fence, the chet. But the word Pesach means to jump over, like to jump over a doorway, which is why the traditional groom of a just married picks up his bride and carries her over the threshold. It's like a picture of, I'm going to pick you up and carry you now. The concept of Pesach is that Yahweh, as the husband, has retrieved his bride, Israel, and picking her up and carrying her over the threshold that's otherwise into the chet, from this place of Zion, from this place of death, this place of the weapon, this place cut off, that standard Vav men, humans can't get into, but now he's carrying them into the chet, and he says, I am your husband, I am your father, I am your champion, your defender, you're mine. Ani le dodi vedodi le. I am my beloved's and my beloved is mine. There's all these concepts built in. So this word, though it's translated apron, it's a girdle, it's a belt. To be gird also is the word for ear, Aleph Zion Nun. And so this idea, there's this card game called Concentration we used to play as kids. Turn all the playing cards face down, and you flip up 2 of them. And if they match, okay, you pull those are yours, and then you flip up other 2. And if they don't match, you have to play with 2 decks, basically. Can you remember where that was? So a lot of looking at these words in Hebrew is like, oh, I know that word. And to use the dictionary is training your mind, getting fit, getting adept. I'm trying to say to encourage you to do this. Some people I remember hearing once a guy was getting older. I think it was a famous judge, and he kept learning new words. And it's like, why? Well, he wanted to keep his mind in use, agile, blood pumping through, keep thinking, stave off that what some people get, dementia and Alzheimer's. Is there a way that we can do this? I'm suggesting that to engage the remembering and phonetical synonyms with this Hebrew language is a great endeavor, just in that practical sense. But what I'm saying is that the chagar, chet gimel resh tav, well, gar, like Igor, is the sidekick, the cub or the whelp. Chet is a fence, chag is the festivals, and it means a girdle or a belt. And it's like, so I'm seeing in this word that Yahweh says, you want to be my cub, my whelp, you want to be my assistant, join me in these moedim, join me in the adorning regalia. Be echad with me, my people. Kaf aleph chet dalet, ka'achad. See, the Nachash said to Adam and Hua, did Elohim perhaps say that you shouldn't eat of every tree? Oh, and Eve said, we can eat of any tree, but except for that one, don't eat it or touch it. Really? Yeah, he said we'd die. You're not going to die. Right out of the gate, the serpent said, you're not really going to die. Now, was that metaphorical or is that physical? It says in Scripture, it's appointed unto man once to die, and then the judgment. Yeshua said, he who lives and believes in me, wait a minute. But he also said, those who believe in him will never die. There's this thing about life and death all through the Scripture, that death is actually, remember Yeshua said that if a kernel of wheat stays with it of itself, it just remains single, but if it'll die and somehow it rebirths in the ground with warmth and water, and what is it that makes a seed come back to life? But if it comes back to life, it'll multiply into thousands. How does that work? He built the system. So what does it mean to be human?